All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Steve Short. Steve is a singer-songwriter and a guitarist. He fronted the band Stationary Pebbles and currently is the guitarist in Brahctopus. Based out of Pittsburgh, PA, Steve has been rocking the scene for quite some time. Coda joins me in this conversation, Coda Kroos, my partner in crime. He also plays in a band called Wanyama, and Wanyama shared a lot of bills with Stationary Pebbles. So I was super glad to get to meet Steve and kind of talk about this super big show we have coming up. Anywho, if you're new to the podcast or you don't know who Sea Level is, Coda and I play in a high-energy funk-punk reggae rock group called Sea Level, letter C dash. We take acoustic 12-string guitars and run them through Marshall amplifiers. Okay, and the big show we have coming up is June 13th at the Winchester. We are opening up for Pete Francis of the band Dispatch. But what's crazy about this bill, not only are we opening up for Pete Francis, but we are backing Pete. So Sea Level is going to be Pete's backing band. Wild, yeah. And to make it even crazier, we recorded a song with Pete that we are releasing June 13th. And joining us on the bill is Brahctopus, and that's June 13th at the Winchester in Lakewood, Ohio, featuring Brahctopus, Songs for an Unknown God, Sea Level, and the great Pete Francis. So if you're nearby, please come hang out with us. It's going to be an epic night all around. Anywho, Brahctopus has some really cool stuff going on. Their summer schedule is getting packed. They got a lot of rad gigs going, but also they just released this super cool concept record called PTFM. And what's cool about this record is not only is it a record, right, but it's also a graphic novel. So, at the show, June 13th, you can pick up a vinyl, you can pick up a graphic novel that goes with it, and if you got a digital download, right, which you can hear all Brahctopus's catalog on all the streaming platforms, and if you go to their website, you can also read the comic along with your streaming experience. That's how ahead of it these guys are. Right? Super cool. Anywho, we're going to get into it. So this is Coda and I talking with Steve Short. If you hear anything you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Steve and sharing his insight with you. So without any further ado, this is Coda and I's conversation with Steve.
So yeah, what's some of your musical origins? What, was there any music in the family? What got you started playing instruments?
So my brother played guitar. He started a year before me. I was 12 years old, so it was just kind of seeing him play, and I was like, that looks like fun. So I started too.
Was it guitar that you started with, or
Yeah.
did you join on bass or whatever was around? Okay.
Yeah, so I actually I tried playing saxophone when I was in second or third grade, and that did not work out at all. I just didn't connect with the instrument. And it was the teacher at the elementary school just didn't jive with me, I guess. So it just wasn't a good experience trying to learn that instrument. And I was super young, so I just didn't take it seriously. But then when I found guitar, it was that was just obvious to me that that's what I wanted to do.
Was it what type of stuff were you and your brother jamming on?
So my brother was a huge metalhead.
Nice.
And so that kind of rubbed off on me early. I would go to my lessons and my teacher taught me the South of Heaven, Slayer album.
Sick.
Yeah.
And that's what I dug into when I was 13 pretty much.
Nice. I can definitely relate to that. My dad was a big Slayer guy and he was playing guitar around the house, and I didn't know that South of Heaven I didn't know the Slayer song per se. But he played the riff so much that I thought for a small period of my life that my dad wrote that riff.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I do remember you telling me.
I think I told that story in some capacity of an interview. I mentioned that before. But I can also relate to the saxophone thing, too, because I played for a year or two, I think 7th or 8th grade or something like that. And yeah, same thing. I was more focused on the guitar. I remember doing a school talent show, and I did Smoke on the Water on the saxophone and then on the guitar. I just played the riff one time and then set the sax down and picked the guitar up.
That's crazy. That's epic. That's a great story. But yeah, pretty much started getting into like funk and like stuff like that, like as I got a little bit older through like high school, but like the metal stuff stuck through high school because like the dudes I was jamming with, we played like Iron Maiden type metal, and we were in a band like I grew up like 30 minutes north of Pittsburgh, so like we thought we were super cool, like being able to drive into Pittsburgh and like play shows in the city when we were in like 11th grade or whatever, and we were like playing metal music, and like pretty much everybody in our high school class thought we were super weird because we were like playing metal and stuff like that, but we thought we were all badass, like just driving into the city.
Totally. So who was like your big metal guitar player? Like who, if you had to pick one metal guitar player, who is it?
Randy Rhoads.
Ooh, good choice. I'm a Dimebag guy,
for sure.
but Randy's definitely up there for me.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really have like a lot of material to like
you're
do
right,
it with, like, but like what he did was like so epic, and like his work ethic on tour, like how he had like a classical guitar teacher like on the bus with him and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was a wicked player, and I feel like metal doesn't get enough of that classical sauce.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or the kind of praise where it matches it in a way. I think like metalheads definitely, but from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that hasn't really like been in my guitar playing, like I'll always be able to like, when I need to like dig into some metal chops, I can, but like I'll always have like love for that period of my life and like that style of music and stuff. But like since high school, it's really been like funk and like jam music and reggae and like Chili Peppers, Dispatch, obviously we connected on like back in the day.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean the musical palette has like expanded outward. But it started with like right when I started playing guitar, like it was I wanted to learn metal. My guitar teacher was trying to like teach me blues and stuff, and like my dad always liked the blues, so like I always resonate with the blues as well. Like Stevie Ray Vaughan is right up there with Randy Rhoads for me.
Sick, yeah. We're definitely big blues guys, and me and Dave started really similar vein, like messing around with Stevie Ray Vaughan songs. But both of our guitar teacher was in a Megadeth cover band, so yeah, we learned a lot of like, it was a good mix of like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Metallica and Megadeth and shit like that.
And then like with the getting out of high school and like later years of high school and like starting to smoke weed and stuff, that's like when it started to chill out a little bit.
Totally, yeah. So speaking of Dispatch, for those listeners, I'm sure we'll drop it in the intro we record, but Steve is playing a show with us with his band Brahctopus, opening for Pete Francis from Dispatch. So
June 13th at the Winchester.
Yeah, so
Lakewood, Ohio.
So that's how that's how me and Steve first connected. Was I was playing in a band called Wanyama, and Steve was playing in a band called Stationary Pebbles, and I remember Steve covering a Dispatch tune. So when forward years later, when the Pete gig came, Steve was the first person I thought of. So just kind of tell us about how you got into Dispatch and how they came onto your radar.
So, a couple people that I graduated with in high school would play like Hey Hey, like that was just part of their like acoustic like set. So that was really the first
hard one to play. Like the harmonies are nuts in that one.
Yeah, that's a deep cut too.
Yeah. So like my intro to Dispatch was just like a deep cut off their first album. And then like a couple years passed, and one of my other buddies showed me like the General and like a couple of the bigger ones. And then at that point I was like, all right. And then I really started digging into their discography and like the Silent Steeples, Who Are We Living For, and Bang Bang, like the trio of those three albums, like from pretty much like 18 until now have just been nonstop on rotation. And then when they came back, like from being broke up, like a year before the Pebbles started, me and a couple of the dudes that I started that band with, we drove out to New Jersey to see Dispatch. It was like their fourth show back after like being broken up for like a decade pretty much. And that kind of started the inspiration to start talking about starting a band.
Huh. So that kind of like, that trip kind of sparked the group.
Yeah, for sure.
That's pretty badass.
And then like going to festivals like over the next year or so, there was about a year in between that Dispatch show and starting the Pebbles. But like, that was definitely the beginning of like knowing that we all kind of wanted to start something.
Was that your first group, or did you have like a garage band or anything before that?
Yeah, the band I was in high school. But after high school, I left that band because like I went to school at Youngstown. The singer went to school out in Columbus, so we just weren't really able to keep it together. But after the Pebbles started, that band actually kept going for a while. So we were just kind of like running alongside each other, but I was also like kind of just chilling out more in my musical tastes. So I was way more into like the jam thing than the metal thing at that point.
That was a heavier band then?
Yeah, we played like Iron Maiden. It wasn't like super heavy.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that. I wasn't piecing. I jumped out of the timeline, and now I'm piecing the timelines back together.
Yeah, for sure. I'm moving all over the place, man.
No, that was us. Yeah, that was us. So cool. So the first time, I don't know when the Pebbles started, but I believe the first time I met you when we were first playing together would have been probably 2015, maybe.
Yeah, so that would have been like 2.5 or like 3 years into the Pebbles. We started in like 2012.
Cool. So yeah, I remember meeting you. It was Club Cafe, and I can't remember what Dispatch song it was, but I want to say it was.
It was probably Time Served.
That sounds right. It was some kind of deep cut. It wasn't like a bang bang or something. It was semi of a deep cut. Yeah, so that might have been it.
Yeah, we used to play Time Served all the time, and then we played like Lightning sometimes, but I don't think we busted out Lightning at Club Cafe.
That's one we've been working on for the Pete set.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Dude, when I do solo acoustic shows, I swear to God, I turn into like a Dispatch cover project for like half of my acoustic set.
So does Dave, yeah.
Hell yeah.
What do you feel about like the Dispatch side projects then, like all the solo stuff or state radio or anything like that?
I love state radio. It's like super groovy. Like it's more of like a reggae thing.
A little more rocking too.
Yeah. It like splits punk and reggae like perfectly. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're a jamming band.
Yeah, a lot of Pete's like solo stuff. He started going like the folky, like Bob Dylan route, and I love that stuff too.
For sure.
And Brad is, I think, the best singer out of all three of them, and I like his songs.
Yeah,
like,
his harmonies are like
a lot.
Yeah, he's the dude that's always going to be like hitting that like high six or something, and like
he is.
Yeah, he's always like yeah. There's the Bradigan harmonies are like super like well done. No matter what, you can hear him cut through everything. And you're like, yeah.
He's like, what note can I pick that wouldn't be the normal note to think, but still sounds like fantastic, and then he can just crush it all the time, like every time.
So leaving metal and kind of getting into the jam band scene, were you looking more into songwriting yourself?
Yeah, I started really writing songs whenever I got back to like the Pittsburgh area after trying my hand at college and that not really working out too well for me.
Did you go for music or did you go for something else?
I started thinking about going for music, and that's what got me started thinking of going to Youngstown State because their music program is pretty good. So by the time I even got there, I changed my mind on it because I was like, I feel like if I go to school for music, that'll kind of like ruin the zest of it for me.
Yeah.
Like just having somebody else tell me like how I should play music and like what is correct and what is not correct just didn't really vibe with me.
I can feel it. It's one of those things where that thing you love becomes the thing you are required to do, and you're required to do all this kind of like workaround stuff about it. You know what I mean? Like it can easily wreck it or like support it.
Yeah, for sure. And then, like, in an academic sense, like, I'm always fine with, like, if somebody else has a song idea and they're like showing me something, like, it would be cool, like, if this is how that guitar part went, like, I'm down for that, like, all day. But, like, in an academic sense of just being like, no, like, you need to, like, read the sheet music and, like, play the jazz.
Play the jazz.
Right. And it's like, I'm fine with, like, listening to that and do it, like, with listening and playing that style of music, but it's just like some of the academic types just don't really jive with me sometimes.
Yeah, this can be a whole. I totally agree. It's like two different worlds of the music spectrum, music career spectrum, and like it's one of those things we could totally put a sub podcast in this podcast about that topic.
Yeah, for sure.
But okay, so you go out there, it's not for you, and I think it's important too to go out there and try the thing that isn't for you.
Right. Yeah. And like when I went out there, like since I decided not to do music before my first semester even started, I just dove into gen ed, like general education. And then like I tried to pick a couple different majors and then I just wasn't taking it seriously enough. Like I just figured it wasn't good to keep wasting the money if I wasn't going to take it seriously. So then I just came home, started working, and that's really when I started digging into songwriting.
Okay. And when you were doing that, were you trying to like emulate some kind of dispatch style stuff? Were you like kind of cracking into some books? Were you cracking into some Bob Dylan stuff? Like what were you doing like as far as like kind of developing your songwriting habits?
Yeah, so I never really tried singing until like that period of my time either.
Okay.
And like this is more of like a Stationary Pebbles conversation. My role in Brahctopus is not really the same as it was in the Stationary Pebbles.
Totally. Yeah.
Which we'll get to that.
Yeah, you don't do much singing in Brahctopus at all, right?
No, I do some backing vocals, and then like every once in a while there's a cover like that I'll sing. But in the early years of the Pebbles, like when I was writing and stuff like that, it was like very heavy Dispatch influence, very heavy Red Hot Chili Peppers influence, Humphreys McGee, things like that.
And you were the principal songwriter in the band. No one else was really bringing those tunes to the table.
Me and the drummer Sam would write some songs sometimes, but primarily, like, I would do the songwriting for the Pebbles.
Okay, yeah, I remember he sang a little bit, right?
No, our other guitar player Ethan would do a little bit of backing vocals, and then our bass player Dustin would sing sometimes on some verses. But Sam was the only one that didn't have a mic. But yeah, he would do some singing. It was like, Pert style, like, I'll write, but I won't sing.
Gotcha.
Okay. So what did that look like? Did that look like poetry? Did it kind of look like a narrative when he brought it to you? And did you mod it, or did it kind of just fit?
It was modded a lot of the time just to fit like chordal like things, and just like sometimes when you have words written out and then you put it into like a 4/4 like rhythm, like you need to change a word here or there just for like syllables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so we started gigging pretty heavy on the songs that we wrote like super early on, and then that led to Stationary Pebbles and Brahctopus starting to play some shows together. And then we would book shows where we were all on stage at the same time. And like a combined band, there was like 10 or 12 of us on stage, and we would play for like 3 hours. And those were parties. Those were some of like my favorite like shows of all time still to this day.
Was there a name for it?
Yeah, so we would call it Stationary Squiggles.
That's awesome. When Stationary got rolling, and like what's the crossover with Brahctopus? Like, is there multiple members in Brahctopus? Okay. Or how'd you guys meet?
So we actually met at Club Cafe as well.
Okay.
Nice.
So I think it was a show where both bands were opening for the Movement. I think that was the first show that we played together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might be wrong. There might have been one before that, but if there was, it's not coming to me right now. But both bands evolved like pretty heavily, like over the years, like in sound. And we just started jamming together. The guitar player, John Wilcox, he's a beast. He moved down to Nashville like 4 years ago, 5 years, something like that. I'm not sure when, but yeah, they just needed to fill that gap. And so they called me and Dylan Davey from a project called the Note Rats in Pittsburgh. They're like super soulful, like funky. They're so good. But so we both joined the band and rounded out the guitar section. So we have 3 guitars in Brahctopus now.
Foo Fighters style.
Yeah, the Eagle style, but like we all have a super different approach to the instrument, and we like layer it in a way that like really works. I don't know if I would say that, but I was the last one to join, so like yeah, I guess in that sense.
Chronologically, boom.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Like, it's one thing to kind of, meet a band and be able to kind of gel with them and do cool shows like that. But then to, like, kind of be able, like, growing into this new project, being able to kind of jump in. Was there kind of a sense of camaraderie musically when you guys were, like, just playing together before you started jamming together?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we could, like when it was just like Stationary Pebbles and Brahctopus, or like vice versa, like whatever the billing was. But when we were just watching each other, like before and after our sets, there was definitely like appreciation both ways. We were like, yeah, these guys are awesome.
Very cool. So what was kind of, if you don't mind me asking, what was kind of the thing that slowed the Pebbles down? I noticed you haven't been doing the Pebbles for a while, so was it someone move, or you just started gigging with Brahctopus harder?
No, so there was probably like a 2.5 year period where I was in Brahctopus and the Pebbles, and like it was super smooth. And like as far as like what stopped the Pebbles like train rolling, that's kind of is more about like other people in the band. So I'm not really like at a liberty to really go into detail, just out of respect for some other people.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, it was just kind of no way to keep the train rolling anymore.
Gotcha. So when about was it that you joined Brahctopus?
2022.
Okay, so when me and Dave were listening to the records today, you would have been on the live record and the most recent record?
So the most recent record was recorded back before the old guitar player John moved down to Nashville. So they were sitting on that for a while, and like there's a graphic novel that coincides with that record, and there's an artist that like drew all of the panels for it that is a homie of ours, and our old keyboard player Dre wrote the story with Ethan, our singer, and Jason, the artist, and there's a chapter for each song that goes along with it, and it tells a whole story and stuff like that. You can actually read the graphic novel online if you don't have one physically. But it was a huge project, and like the songs on that album are pretty much what made me want to join the band. So even though that's a recent album, it's John, Austin, Ethan, and Trav, Carl, our bass player, and Nick.
Gotcha.
That's the people on that album. So I'm on the live one. We just threw down 4 in the studio the other week, so that's going to be coming out hopefully in July. And that'll be the first studio stuff I'm on for Brahctopus.
Very cool. How'd you guys track it? Did you track it live or bit by bit?
Bit by bit. We went to very tight recordings in Pittsburgh. Matt Very, he's an awesome engineer. I wasn't really aware of him. Our drummer Travis was like, we need to go here. And then he went and tracked his drums there on one day. And then like a month later, everybody would just went to the studio. We rented it out for a weekend, and we just all crushed out our parts in 3 days.
So how I'm curious how that works. So like me and Dave, Sea Level's always been a 3-piece. Actually, at one point we did have a second guitar player for a little while. Yeah, for a little while. But for the most part, I've only ever played in a band with one guitar player. I'm curious how tracking 3 guitar players works. Like who goes first? Is it the same person every time? How do you decide who's playing lead on what song? Like, just how to get into the weeds of how all that works for me.
So sometimes on the record, not all three guitars will be present like at all times.
For sure.
Like we do a good job of like, all right, this person's going to be playing the rhythm section, maybe even on like this verse, and then that guitar won't like be on the recording for other parts of it, and like vice versa. Deciding who takes which solo when kind of just happens naturally.
Do all three of you play lead?
Yeah, it's at different times for sure. And like a lot of the times we kind of defer to the songwriter. Like Ethan, our ukulele player, and Travis, our drummer, does the majority of the writing. Dylan, our one guitar player, has written a couple tunes. But a lot of the times it's just like one of those guys will just be like, hey, it'd be cool if like you took that solo there. And like nobody really ever argues about it or anything like that. We're all pretty chill about it.
Cool. I just envisioned it like a School of Rock Jack Black kind of vibe where he's like, I just gotta rip a fat solo right here.
So I guess like kind of playing in a group with two other players that, you know, have their own voice, what like is, I guess in two ways, like songwriting and in like lead playing, what kind of lessons do you glean from your fellow like players?
Yeah, so Nick has a really, really good ear for like the different tones and like sounds that he wants to get out of his like equipment and stuff like that. So like I've really been inspired by him to like start looking into different like options as far as like how to get sounds. I've always been kind of like minimalistic as far as like how to approach my pedal board and create textures and stuff like that. And then Dylan is kind of like a beast on guitar. He's really, really good, and he's like he's less of a shredder and more of like a like composer, you know what I mean? Like he knows what he wants, and he'll like sit there and write it out like in his head until like he's happy with what he gets. You know, I'm not even like really explaining it all that well, but like he's a beast, and like I've been able to like even see how he approaches different licks inside of his solos and like transpose that over to like different things that I've been like stuck on. Like there's times where I feel like I'm plateauing and just playing the same stuff over and over again. And then like after I joined Brahctopus and started jamming with him, like I've been able to like open my mind and my like playing to a lot of different like techniques and just runs like that I wouldn't have really thought of, like combining notes in a different order that I would have never really thought to do.
Okay,
until I started jamming with him.
That's cool. I mean, I think it's important as a musician to kind of be around and like be influenced by other players that are kind of not challenging you in a competitive way, but bringing out ideas you wouldn't think of to kind of influence you to like grow more in different directions. So with that, with Dylan, do you find is it like kind of concepts like going back to like rhythmic or just like note choices? Like attempting different modes or scales or just chord, I said that weird, chord vicens, you know, them chord vicens, you know, but like things like that you, as a player, you pick up along the way and like you kind of go back and hash back and you're like, you know what, fuck, I never gave like harmonic minor enough attention, or, you know what I mean? Like, Is that the kind of stuff he's kind of like inadvertently like showing you?
Yeah. Dylan uses chord voices that I didn't really even know were a thing.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that's exactly kind of hitting the nail on the head. And like just different runs that he uses inside of his solos that I've never used before and started like throwing into my own playing pretty much.
That's awesome. Have you seen the other guys like maybe like take some inspiration from you?
I'm not too sure. I know that actually, I don't know if Dylan was big on tapping before, like I was in Brahctopus, and then we came up with this like little harmonized like tapping lick.
Okay, that's pretty
in one
sick.
of our songs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Listening to Brahctopus versus hearing you play with Pebbles, like I don't know. I just never. It's hard for me to tell because I'm not sure which guitar player is playing what because I'm not actually seeing it. I'm just hearing it. But everything in Brahctopus is really shreddy, and I just wasn't used to you playing like that. So as soon as I heard Brahctopus, I'm like, what parts is he playing? Because it's like everything sounds really, really like shreddy and kind of like, I don't know, almost like I guess you could put a lot of people in there, but like I was getting like Warren Haynes vibes from some of the licks.
Oh, dang. That's pretty dope. Yeah, Warren Haynes is like jam band Santa Claus.
Oh my God, dude. That's the fucking nail on the head there.
There you go.
Jam band Santa Claus. Like, I guess, it's interesting too, kind of fronting a band as a songwriter and then supporting as a guitar player. I find like when I'm playing just guitar, I think about it and approach it a little more differently with more intent maybe because I'm not trying to pull the whole song when I'm just singing and playing,
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm able to just completely hone in on my parts and step up to the microphone when I need to do my backing vocals and then just like go back into my parts and just really focus on getting them as locked in and not really robotic because you want to like still be like free while you're on stage and playing the stuff, but like just as natural as it can be.
So did you record backing vocals in that session or is it all
No, I didn't. So we actually had our friend Carly who sings for Dylan's other project, the Moat Rats. She's like probably the best singer I've ever met in my life. So she did all the backing vocals that I normally do on stage, which I am super happy to defer those duties to her in the studio.
Was she on the other records?
So one of the earlier records that Brahctopus did, Mothership, she sings on the song Eternity.
Okay. Yeah, those are ripping.
Yeah, so she's not on that newer one?
No, I don't think she has any vocals on that one.
Yeah, because that's what led me to ask you if you were tracking harmonies on the new session, because on that last one I thought it sounded like it was all kind of like what Dave does, where he does his harmonies, you know what I mean? Lead vocal harmonies.
I close the door.
Yeah, dude, that's all Austin guy. He was Brahctopus's old keyboard player, like organist. And he composes like backing vocals and stuff like that. He likes charting them out and like singing them. And yeah, he stacked up a lot of really crazy harmonies on that album for sure.
Very cool. Is he also the one who's like writing the string parts? Because that was honestly like the most impressive thing to me with that album was like there was a lot of expansive like
it was the
orchestration.
Production was tight. You're right.
The strings might have been Travis. So yeah, Travis, our drummer, has an audio engineering degree from Duquesne out of Pittsburgh. And he's done like up until this latest like 4 songs that we just recorded in the studio. He recorded all of the Brahctopus stuff. He did Mothership and PTFM pretty much in his bedroom.
Always drummers, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Drummers are okay. And I have a theory on this. And I want to share this theory, right? I think a drummer, they're kind of driving the whole dynamic of the band. So in a way, they're kind of orchestrating it and composing it. And I think that's why drummers totally can play keys and totally get into like production. It's just like then orchestrating it instead of behind the band, in front of the band. It's just like it's like a headspace that type of person gets into. That's my theory.
Yeah. So I'm not too sure if that was Travis or Austin or somebody else on the strings idea. We would need to loop Travis into that conversation because I wasn't around for like those recording sessions, you know?
For sure. Yeah, maybe when you guys put out that next record, we'll do another podcast with some of the other dudes. Yeah,
for sure. I'm sure they'd love to.
I just figured we'd have you on just because that's how we connected, was through you. So it made sense to start there.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
With the last record, with as big as a concept as it is, with the book to go along with it, did you pick up on that initially when you were hearing some of this stuff live? Like, did they kind of share what they were going for? And like, did that kind of aside from the musicality, did that also kind of like buy you into this? Like, oh, these guys they're cooking up something crazy. I got to be in this.
So, I mean, didn't really know that they were doing the graphic novel and like the programmatic like story with like all the songs and stuff like that until I knew them a little bit better. I was already completely like bought in on the music and stuff like that. And I knew that they were like good people and like they're a good hang and stuff like that. So like by the time Ethan called me and asked if I wanted to join, I had already been filling in on guitar for a lot of shows, just not as like an official member. And he just called me and was like, hey, it just makes sense for this to happen. And like, I didn't even have to think about it for like 2 seconds. I was just like, yeah.
For sure.
Very cool. Yeah, I find that interesting because we've been working on this crazy concept record and like, it's not, I don't think.
And Dave he's burying the hatchet too. He's also drawing a graphic novel himself that doesn't go with our record. It's completely separate, but
that's still pretty dope.
He gets like one panel done a week, so I can see why it took your guys so long to get it rolling.
Yeah, dude, and I mean it was definitely worth the wait. Because even though it took like a few years after like the tracks were done being recorded, like the timing that it was released, like the songs ended up sounding like so good, and the graphic novel looks great. And then on top of that, just like the timing that it was released was like right when like Brahctopus started getting some pretty dope opportunities. So like it just coincided with like momentum. So it was able to get in front of more people than it would have gotten in front of like if it had been released like a year and a half prior.
Cool. So is that graphic novel going to be available at the show on June 13th?
Yeah, it sure will. We have vinyls, we have CDs of the PTFM album, and then we have physical copies of the graphic novel.
Nice. And then you said that if people can't afford the graphic novel, you guys have like a PDF version for them?
Yeah, you can go on brahctopus.com and there's like a section of the website that has the graphic novel. You can scroll along with it while you're listening.
That's very cool because I'm a big Coheed and Cambria fan, and they put out a graphic novel with every album, and sometimes
that's pretty cool.
Sometimes they get very, very expensive. So
yeah. I didn't realize that they did that.
Having a free version is a clutch thing, I feel, when you get into that type of stuff.
Hell yeah, especially when we don't like obviously have the fan base that Coheed has, where like
even for them like, it's still hard to get, you know.
Yeah, they have like millions of people waiting on their like every move. We have like we're still just like trying to get people's attention, you know.
That makes it all that much cooler that you guys have that graphic novel element, because like they didn't get that rolling for them until later in their career. Like they had a self-made one early on that they sold at shows, but I think through that they were able to kind of build up more revenue to pay for like making a real one later down the line, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
you
for
guys
sure.
are already killing it, you know?
Oh yeah. But yeah, that's dope that you're doing a graphic novel on the side. I've been trying to do like fiction, like short stories and like novels and stuff like that, but I'm just like slowly getting more comfortable with that like art form and stuff like that. But I have a lot of ideas for like fiction stories, so that's dope that you're going down that road as well.
Very cool. Like, did you find kind of on the like switch from songwriting into like novel writing? Was there a crossover? Because I've been doing a lot of writing exercises that make me think in a more kind of like narrative way that would be really hard to kind of fit into a song, the limited structure of a song. But like it's like a good practice, because like a song is like you take that whole narrative and you trim it down to the bare bones that anyone can tell the story, right?
Yeah.
So was that kind of I guess this writing process kind of part a byproduct, or like maybe like a side for songwriting for you?
It's almost like a detour away from it, just to like keep it fresh, like having it like I I don't really approach them in a similar way. Just the vibe of the stuff that I'm writing is also a lot different in each sense. Like when I'm writing songs, like a lot of it is for like a funk song or like a reggae song or something more like upbeat and stuff like that. And I'm doing like psychological thriller stuff with my storytelling. It's like complete opposite vibe. So I kind of have to separate how I approach the two things.
I mean, the next album, Psychofunk, or the next side project, and we can just make it some crazy sounding funk with some wild
it just ends up sounding like Primus.
That's Primus. Yeah,
that's Primus. But that's awesome, man. That's really cool. Like the project I've been working on has been like an illustrated version of the podcast, so it hasn't been as like righty as far as the narrative goes, which is, a good writing word. Call it righty. That's a really professional sounding way to do it. But
I mean, it got the point across for sure.
Yeah, but it's still, I do these writing exercises every day, and I can easily like kind of see being like inspired and kind of refreshed by that rabbit hole. Yeah,
definitely.
So what? I'm curious. You mentioned reggae. You keep saying like funk and reggae kind of in the same breath, and we talked about you getting into dispatch. I'm curious, like what was the first kind of reggae music that got you sparked into reggae when you were young? Was it Sublime or somebody else?
Dude, so it was like, it's really crazy how it happened, because I mean, like the bass player in my metal band in high school, his whole family is like super into reggae music. And this was like 2009 or 2010, like my last year of high school. And he showed me actually Stick Figure's album Smokestack.
Wow.
And that was back when it was like just Scott, the dude from Stick Figure, like pretty much him.
It was pretty low production back then too, compared to what they are now.
Yeah, dude. So I got to watch that band blow up from like nothing, from like my bass player showing me that record in high school. And the Pebbles got to open up for Stick Figure.
No way.
Like in 2013, it was their first like East Coast tour. We opened for them at the Hard Rock Cafe in Pittsburgh and Peabody's in Cleveland.
Nice.
Wow, that was a while ago. Yeah. We still had Peabody's.
Well, that's a badge you can wear, because Peabody's is like a notorious Cleveland venue for people our age. Like you had to, like, you're not a Cleveland musician if you didn't come up and play Peabody's at least once or whatever. So you're from Pittsburgh and you still got the badge, so that's cool.
And that venue was dope. They had like the little side room with the stage, and then like the little patio like in between the two stages,
and then the upstairs bar. Yeah
dude.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, so I was shown like a super small project that ended up, now they're like on top of the scene, but like I pretty much got into Stick Figure before anything else. And then like I started diving into like the whole like fusion, like reggae stuff with like Slightly Stupid, where they'll like just combine a bunch of different genres, but it's like reggae at the heart.
Yeah, it's funny. Listening back to your stuff today, I was thinking to myself, your voice in Stationary Pebbles, your voice really reminds me of Miles from Slightly Stupid.
Hell yeah.
But
yeah, that's probably not on accident. Like when I was practicing singing, it was a lot, like when I was just learning how to sing, it was a lot of Slightly Stupid and a lot of Dispatch.
But when I'm listening to Brahctopus, I'm hearing like more of a Slightly Stupid influence on the music, at least maybe not genre wise per se, but like there's pockets you guys hit where I get the feel of like more modern day Slightly Stupid, where it's just this full band, and it was just weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it. That's probably like the biggest comparison, is like there's just a lot of layers to it.
How many members are you guys rocking right now?
7.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have Ethan.
That's probably my guess.
Yeah, Ethan does main vocals and he plays electric ukulele. And then we have 3 guitarists, keys, drums, and bass.
Very cool. I'm excited to see you guys.
Yeah, we're pumped to get out to the Winchester. And
has Brahctopus played Cleveland before?
No,
Nice.
we have not.
Very cool.
Yet.
Yeah, we will in 1 month.
In 1 month, and
Less than a month.
Yeah, probably in a couple of weeks.
No, wait, yeah, no, it is right around a month.
So, what jumping back to like when we met, you know, we really connected on Dispatch and the Chili Peppers. What's your go-to Chili Peppers album? What's like the number one?
Blood Sugar, for sure.
Yeah, Blood Sugar. You kind of said it before. I was gonna say not counting Blood Sugar because I feel like that's like the be all end all answer.
Yeah, for sure. So, it depends on the mood. Like if I'm like super chilled out, like I really, really like By the Way. I think By the Way is awesome, but then like Californication is also like undeniable.
For sure. I always go back to the earlier stuff, like Uplift Mofo Party Plan really gets me going.
For sure.
Or sometimes I go on a Mother's Milk kick. Like I'll like put that record on and then just listen to that for like a week straight.
Yeah, one of the ones that I always kind of defer back to a few times a year and just can't stop listening to it for maybe like a month at a time is Freaky Styley.
Yeah.
Like every song on that album is a banger.
Did you hear Slightly Stupid's acoustic record?
The Live and Direct, yeah.
So when you started singing and playing, was that like one of those records that kind of got you singing and playing?
Yeah, like Collie Man.
Yeah.
And then Mellow Mood.
Okay, yeah, because that record's so good, and I remember hearing that like, and like thinking, Miles had like a very distinct voice, and like where he put his placement, like it was so weird compared, but not weird in a bad way. It was just so unique. And I remember going to that record and being like, because that's a good, like, because it's just two guys and you can kind of tear apart songwriting and like how the bass line and guitar fits.
Mm. Yeah, his vocal inflections on like Fire Below.
Yeah.
Is like super sick. And when they did like the studio version of it later, like I forget what album they did a studio version of it on. I still love it, but like it just doesn't hit the same way as it did when they did like that Live and Direct thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
It has to be the biggest, like, for any like band that's like puts out this rad acoustic record, and then they go into the studio and they do all this production and thought behind everything, and everyone's just like, "Yeah, dude, we liked it when you know didn't care that much." I guess like
right, probably just ripped a bong and like just started going on the microphone with it.
That's awesome. Have you got to see them before?
Yeah, I've seen them a bunch of times. If I don't have a gig and they're in Pittsburgh, I'll go.
Yeah, they're a good time.
So another thing you mentioned, which is interesting too, you guys opened for the Movement, and it was kind of like a stick figure situation because those guys got pretty huge too.
Yeah, the Pebbles were lucky enough to open for them a couple of different times. I'm pretty sure Brahctopus did as well. They would always hit Club Cafe when they came through, and like seeing them in that room was super sick.
Yeah. I remember seeing them in a super small venue in Columbus, like no one there, you know.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that was actually how I met the Wanyama dudes. Was they opened for the Movement back in the day? I think it would have been like 2010 maybe.
Where was it, Grog?
Yeah. Your Aunt Kim brought us there. This is before I could drive, so Dave's aunt drove us to the show.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, because Kim really got into him because we saw him like open for G Love or something.
Yeah, so I remember walking into the venue and the bass player Smiles was like, "Oh, hey Kim, oh good to see you," and I was like, "Damn, Dave, your aunt's really cool."
Hell yeah.
But hey, man, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us and for doing this show. We're super stoked about it. But yeah, man, so it means a lot. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no problem at all. I appreciate you having Brahctopus out. We're all super excited to get out to Cleveland. I'm personally like super stoked to open for Pete. He's like huge inspiration for me. I know that Ethan, our ukulele player, loves Dispatch as well. So we're kind of geeking out a little bit. Definitely appreciate that you thought of reaching out to see if we wanted to do it. Totally,
yeah, man. Appreciate you being down. It's gonna be a good time. What's your favorite Spatch song?
Probably Time Served.
Okay.
I love like the flow that Chad has in the verses and just like the riffs and the way that the song builds.
I've always really loved Hey Hey. Like you mentioned that one right off the cuff. That's always been one of the standout ones for me, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Bridges off of Silent Steeples.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I love that song.
Steeples is a really good one too. That was one of the songs we used to cover when we first started, was Steeples. And I remember when we would cover it, I just always thought like, damn, wish I could write a song this good.
I know.
Yeah. I played a festival like a couple of weeks ago, and Brahctopus played, but then I also played with a couple of the old Pebbles guys, with like a couple of the Brahctopus dudes. Like we just did like a hodgepodge kind of jam, and we covered Past the Falls.
Ooh, damn. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
It seems like you lean towards the Pete songs. I don't know. You definitely mentioned a couple Chad songs too, but me and Dave, we've always kind of been like torn. Like, I think Dave's more of a Chad guy and I'm more of a Pete guy, maybe. But it's like a different day, different thing.
Like, yeah, but like I like all three of them. But like, yeah, I like Bridges and Lightning are probably my favorite two Pete songs.
Okay. There's a very high chance you will hear both those June 13th
at the Winchester.
At the Winchester.
That is very exciting.
But awesome, man.
Hell yeah. Well, we appreciate your time. One quick silly question before we get off the last one. I thought of this today since we're just because last night I took a very deep sports wound with the Cavs getting eliminated. And
damn.
You're a big Steelers guy. I'm a Browns guy. So before we sign off, I wanted to like solidarily try to name. You give me your favorite Steelers player and your favorite Browns player, and then I'll try to do the same.
Is this all time or just like
all time? Yeah,
currently.
Yeah. All
okay,
time.
Got you. So, Troy Polamalu and Josh Cribbs.
Okay, nice. That's crazy. That's crazy because those were basically my picks. I was like at first I'm gonna hit him with like Joe Hayden and Joe Hayden.
Joe Hayden and Joe Hayden. Hell yeah.
But
that is the answer.
I started seriously thinking about it, and Troy Polamalu is the one Steeler I always actually liked over the years because he was a cheat code in Madden back in the day, and his hair's always been cool as hell. So he was my pick.
He could play wherever on the field.
Yeah, exactly. Then I started thinking about Browns, and I'm like, oh, Josh Cribbs a good pick. But then I was like, I can't not pick Phil Dawson. Phil Dawson's my eternal Brown.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Reliable as hell.
Yep, the only person to win us a game ever.
That's pretty much the Steelers with Boswell the past couple of years, so I feel it.
Yeah. Hell yeah, well, we appreciate your time, Steve. It was good talking to you. We'll
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig of the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.